Day 2 of the July 96 7-day retreat in Springwater. With quite a number of people here who've never been here before. The question is very real. What do I do here? It doesn't only come up for people who are here for the first time. Over all these many years, I've been told that one of the hardest things is to explain to somebody what one is doing here during 7 days, before one gets here, or after one gets home. And maybe the difficulty of explaining it or describing it is that at the moment of asking, one isn't really here. One has to think about it. And thought has a very hard time with it. And looking directly, why is it so difficult to be here directly, immediately, and then allow the words to flow out of this presence unpremeditatedly? It's so difficult because there has been laid down over years and decades and centuries and eons a network of thinking and talking and experiencing oneself and one's world. And the ability to respond quite automatically from this laid down network of thinking about oneself and each other and the world. And then the difficulty to step out, as it were, out of this network into what's really going on. For which there is no network, no automatism, just simple presence and openness and allowing words to come. So, one has heard about this place or read a book, an article, and here we are, sitting down in a quiet, open space, surrounded by all shades of greenery. It's amazing. Spring and early summer. All the different shades of green, the glossiness of the leaves, the bird song and insect hum, and gentle breeze through the weeds and grasses and branches. Usually, one expects to find peace and quiet in a silent retreat. One's whole being is longing and yearning for that. And yet, maybe to one's amazement or not, what reveals itself in this quiet space is all kind of chaos. physical agitation, mental agitation, thoughts crisscrossing, remembrances. Remembrances one has not remembered in ages, bubbling up, upsetting or agitating the organism. Or just the constant spin out of random thoughts, or what seems to be random thoughts. And in the midst of it, this question, what should I pay attention to? Is there a practice that is helpful in the midst of this chaos? Actually, as a solace to people who are here for the first time, this agitated state of chaotic thoughts and feelings and emotions, stuff going on all the time in the mind, the body faithfully accompanying it all. That doesn't just happen to people who are new at this. We did mention this in the opening talk, or maybe I don't know when. This is par for the course. A body, mind that is revved up with activity from our overstuffed daily lives needs time and space and patience. Gentle attention, gentle observation, gentle listening to rev down again. Not expecting the calm state, but being with a noisy state, befriending the chaos. And if the question comes up again, well, how do I do that? There is no how. There's only what's here. Thinking, sensing, emoting, tensing or relaxing, fearing, desiring. And every once in a while, a coming to, a waking up, which is the deed of no one. It just happens to human beings like you and me. Momentarily in the beginning, momentarily waking up to being here, as it is this moment. Whatever there is, the thoughts that still vibrate in the memory. Cognizant of them for a moment, aware. And then what? What happens at this precious, crucial moment that takes place for human beings? Not just in a quiet place, wherever one may find oneself, a moment of coming to. The inner upset or turmoil or wanting, churning, fearing, scheming, trying to get something, trying to avoid something, and endless thinking about it. And waking up for a moment aware of all this diverse movement. At this moment, is there just the cool air touching the skin? The birds calling, the sun shining. all kinds of physical sensations, maybe a pain in the back, or knees, or hip. Body manifesting some emotional state triggered by the thoughts that still vibrate in the memory. The whole scene is there, together with brown floor, dark holes, people all around. Is that enough to just be there for a moment and stay there listening to what's there in all simplicity? Or is immediately the network kicking in with its automatic judgments, its habitual evaluations of how I'm doing in comparison to how I did earlier, or how I would like to do, or how I think the other people are doing? Comparing, evaluating, judging good and bad, right and wrong. And the ending of an open moment of nowness, newly overlaid with old patterns of reacting. And not aware of this process. Right now, we're talking about it, or we're looking at, are we looking at it? Or just listening to words? Or is it possible, as one listens to words, to open up to what these words point at right now in each one of us? So there's not just verbal communication, but a touching of completely common space of looking and discovering. So, talking about this moment of attention and then the habitual reactiveness, looking at it as it happened this morning 100 times, yesterday. It's there in the repertoire. And wondering about it, wondering whether it has to be like this next time and again, or whether it is indeed possible for a moment of attention to stay with birds and insects and breathing and the agitation aroused in the body, but not fall into the track of condemning or judging. To beware of that. It's already there at the threshold, wanting to kick in. One can feel these things coming up to the threshold. Reactions are felt before they have turned themselves into words or overt activity. It's possible. This is what is all made possible by the increasing transparency of awareness. And if that transparency is there, the reactiveness does not have to spread out and take over this moment of attention, as it usually has done or will do. It doesn't matter. But this moment, can there be a hanging in there with what's going on? The tremendous momentum to react, to judge. And maybe the tremendous urge to get lost again. Because as one person pointed out in a meeting, and this has been reported to me many times before, at times when there is sort of a faint glimpse of something real, a flower, there's also fear maybe even terror. And slipping back into this more familiar and therefore more comforting capsule of thinking and knowing and remembering. Afraid of the so-called unknown, the immediacy of being here. And not without thought, because when there is no thought, there is nothing to be afraid of, nothing fearful about being here, in touch as nobody special, with twittering and flowering and blowing and breathing, and nothing fearful about it. On the contrary, this is our true home, our original state of being. And yet, having lived all our life, or most of our life, because it wasn't like that in the beginning, when we were born and beginning to look around and feel and touch and examine. But very quickly in our life, the spinning of our little thought-imagined world took place and is still taking place. And in that we find an imagined security, afraid to venture out, or when it happens, withdrawing. Because one of those thoughts cultivated in the capsule says, this is dangerous. You may disappear. You may have to die. I don't know what's going to happen. These thoughts make for the fear or terror, not the presence of flowers and birds and breathing and vast sky. I heard about an experiment. Maybe you've heard about it too. In which flies were raised in a jar. Have you heard about that? The jar was closed, the flies were raised in this jar. And then the jar was opened, and the flies did not fly out. That was their home. They knew somehow or other, if this experiment is true, I believe the person who reported it, this was their world. Don't recall whether here and there one did venture out, but the majority stayed in the jar. So this question of what to do when I get here, here I am. I don't know all the rules yet of being in this place, and it may be intimidating sometimes to somebody to hear so many guidelines, but I think we have conveyed that this is just grown out of experience and grown out of what people who come here want this place to be. So one has found out that one is not being supervised and rewarded or punished for transgressions. Nobody has mentioned it, I'm just improvising here. So, here I am, sitting down, body fairly quiet, and the head spinning, as one person said, just spinning, 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 and the body tense. Or, as someone else reported, the first day of listening to the birds and feeling the breeze and listening to the breathing was lovely, but now I'm bored. So what to do? And is there a practice that could help? And of course there are practices, meditation practices, many, many different ones. Some of them similar, some quite divergent. The most basic one in spiritual training centers for centuries, maybe millennia, has been to, I wouldn't say follow the breath, just awareness of breathing as it happens, because that's the closest to this body. Nothing closer than breathing. And not to imagine that one knows. Did we talk about this already? Maybe we did. Not to imagine one knows what breathing is, or that one knows the pathway of breathing, because all knowledge is very limiting and may prevent discovering that maybe this entire organism is breathing in an unimaginable way. So just to be in touch with what's going on, as little based on what one already knows, no visualization necessary unless it happens spontaneously. Touching, feeling, experiencing this miraculous body with which, whether we are asleep or awake or daydreaming, knows quite well and wisely what to do, how to stay alive, keep warm, keep the heart beating, the food digesting, and so forth. Amazing, isn't it? We thought we were the owner of this body, but we know next to nothing about it unless we are medical experts, and even medical experts usually are very specialized on one part, leaving the next part to the next expert. But here, it's happening, it's going on right here. Under our own eyes, or inner eyes, inner ears and senses, it's happening. Not that we know about it, but it's happening, it's going on. It's taking place. No word can substitute for the mystery of it. That maybe for moments at a time can be felt awarely. Not what should I do with it? There's nothing to do with it. That's ego thought. I have to do something about it. I have to keep this up. It's keeping itself up. Whether we're attentive or not, the breathing goes on. And yet, whenever there's a moment of attention, it's full there. And if one hasn't learned too long to just concentrate on this one thing of following or counting or visualizing the breathing, but has some ease and openness, then bird song and whatever else is going on is also there in that same moment of attention. So maybe the question is one directing oneself exclusively to one part of this seamless, ongoing, living process. Which takes thought. That takes thought and willpower to just do one thing, concentrate on the breathing, as it were. And that's not necessary, even though maybe we may think it is. There's no need to concentrate on one thing, because attention, when it does happen, is all-inclusive. It knows no division between this and that, this being more important and that being less important. That judgment is the action of the network of thinking. Do this, don't do that, be good at it. Be successful. All these injunctions that one can listen to at times with amazement. Millions of tapes running invisibly inside this skull. One of the tapes may be Toni's voice. People have told me this. I can hear your voice talking. So, what am I to do sitting down? I'm not good at this. I've just started. I'm no expert. I have no practice. Here I am. Am I here? Simple? Or am I here as something? As a beginner? As a meditator? Well, you name it. You can watch it. As what are we here? Very important to discover this image that is served every moment of our network life. Being a man or a woman, being young or old, good or bad, and mixtures of all of that. And we're asking right now, can we be here as nothing particular? Meaning, discovering the imagery and questioning it seriously, whether we are an image sitting here or a living process, which can also become an image, of course. I'm a living process. That's the danger of words. Brain spins them into formulations by which we have learned to live in a jar, even though the lid is not on. So, as what are we sitting here? And is it necessary to serve an image? The image of what we believe most that we are, the image to which we are most attached, what we want to be and represent to others. Being beautiful or intelligent or shy or whatever. Everybody can look for themselves as the airplane hums on. To listen and hear the airplane humming, its beautiful sound, don't have to be anything, do I? Don't have to be man or woman. Don't have to be musical or non-musical. Don't have to be good at meditating or inexperienced. It's humming. It's breathing. It's twittering. It's cooling. It's peopling all around. So, in sitting down, am I sitting down as something or other? Probably am, because that's the network, it's in place. But it can be questioned whether it's needed. As habitual as it is, as addicted as the organism is to its thoughts, as jittery as it gets when the thoughts and images are questioned. I may not be anything. I got to be something. What will I be when I leave this retreat? All of these jitter-arousing questions can be questioned. They're habitual, and the body responds with habitual addiction to good thoughts and scary thoughts. To let it be observed in doing that. Not condemned, not judged. It's happening for you and me. And yet there's some awareness of it too. Some minute attention which may grow into more stable awareness if there's great patience and a certain form of dedication to this work. Need not be ritualized at all. It happens with this work. Because if there is the presence and no fear, no withdrawing because that thought has been seen through, no fear of disappearing, because what disappears is an image, not this organism. That's here as long as its time lasts. So as imagery and the attachment to it subsides, there is an amazing sense of well-being in stillness and quiet, no matter what waves of thoughts or sensations may pass through. This is what I would like to just convey to people who have reported to me how much hard work it is, how enormous the effort to stay attentive. And I understand that. When effortlessness is not present, we make effort. This is how it is. The moment there's effortlessness, no effort is needed. That's clear. But this attention which seems so hard to come by, unless there is work, be attentive and noticing fantasy and bringing the mind back. This is how it's usually put. Bringing the mind back to this moment, and maybe a moment of here-ness and then off again. One person said it's harder than digging ditches. And yet the good news is that this may turn around so that this is our natural abode, being here as no one special. And maybe some effort at trying to think about ourselves, particularly at a time like this. Actually, several people reported even coming up the road from the parking lot or entering the building, something dropping off and a stillness present, experienced, which usually doesn't last because the mind takes over with its worries and unfinished business, which it wants to finish up, put into order. And then the question, if it is possible to come here and feel so much at peace, even for moments, maybe just in the beginning, maybe just in the end or in the middle, why not in my daily life? Already amazing. Each retreat is a little bit different, but so many people have brought up, how will this be when I get back? You've hardly gotten here. But sensing something that is so radically different from one's daily involvement and drainedness, demands put on one, full-time job and then coming home to kids and family and maybe committee work. No time for myself. Several people have said that already. Not even time to exercise or sit quietly, because I have to get up so early and come home so late. Well, now you're here. You're not there. There is an image. It's an idea, a memory. How this relates to our everyday living, we have to find out from moment to moment. Whether it's indeed possible in the midst of the demands of our job and family to come out of stillness rather than ego involvement. Am I doing it well? How do they see me? Do they approve of me? I have to do it better than others. These things are incredibly draining. Or this whole trip of self-pity, feeling sorry for oneself for working so hard. Others have it so much easier. And all the emotions that such thought structures or storyline bring up in the body and need to be dealt with. Usually the actual daily moment-to-moment living is not as draining as what we think about it and how we react to our thinking. That's where the real drain sets in. Because doing and working need not be a drain and a burden when it's not accompanied by self-pity. Obviously, there can be too much of everything, and maybe one will gather the strength at times to say no to something which is really too much and then will affect the family or people one works with. One has to become observant in our daily life. What do we do? And do we have to do all of that? And why do we do all of that? To serve an image? Because we can't say no because we don't want to be the naysayer? If there is some intelligent looking and observing happening in our daily life, it orders itself on its own. I remember this from my own life early with this work of Zen meditation. I was never a staff member. I was never ordained or something like that. Because I commuted into Rochester sometimes 2 times a week, a few times 3 times a week, and had family at home and all the householding work. But I noticed that I could drop things, activities, which lost their overriding importance. A lot of singing activity that I was engaged in. And people would try to make me feel bad, say, how could you do this? Nice voice. But it was no renunciation. Space was needed and space happened because it was clear what was important to do. And that comes with some daily, moment-to-moment, clear observing. Unfogged, not fogged by imagery, or seeing through the fog of imagery and its power over our lives. But not absolute power, not absolute necessity to serve imagery. think we can leave it here for today, and if questions have come up, we do have meetings in which you can bring up questions. Incidentally, I forgot to say at the beginning of these talks that if there's ever something that you wish to bring up to me and don't want me to bring this up in a public talk like this, then let me know and I won't. If you don't say anything, things may surface because everyone here is all the rivulets moving and spilling into this river, which is our consciousness, being revealed here freely. We will end here for today.